of those queer tricks that fate sometimes plays. Nobody would believe, for instance, that the entire lives of a peaceful American boy and girl could be changed by a funny little war between two small countries far across the sea. And yet it came to pass. The spies of the two little nations were at a Pacific seaport, each trying to prevent the other from getting ships and supplies. At what looks to be a very heated meeting, men are discussing with great passion their opinions. Gentlemen, the enemy has come upon us. They hasten to the window and open the doors to look outside. There she lies now, the ship. We will send her adrift in the fog tonight before the new crew goes aboard. The wind, the tide, and the rocks will do the rest. As they discuss their plans, they shut the doors of the window. The wealthy ship owner who has just sold the Navigator and his daughter. It's Frederick Room and Catherine McGuire. Presumably, Catherine and Frederick are speaking, and the Rollo Treadway, heir to the Treadway fortune, a living proof that every family tree must have its sap. Buster Yeaton. Here we see presumably Buster and his servant. Buster's just finished his breakfast and heads over to sit in the corner, but then turns to the window. He looks outside to see a newlywed couple, African American by the looks of it, and they're excitedly together in their horse-drawn carriage celebrating their marriage. Buster says to his servant, "I think I'll get married." The servant continues his duties, preparing Buster's attire. Buster says, "I'll be married today. We'll sail for Honolulu tomorrow on our honeymoon and get 2 tickets." The servant is astounded by this and doesn't quite know what to say. Buster, totally lost in his thought, climbs into the bath with his robe on and slippers on, as well as his bedclothes. He undresses and presumably gets into the bath. He'd completed all the arrangements except to notify the girl. So Buster, now bathed and clothed for the day, leaves his house and climbs into his automobile with his driver and servant. They turn around in the road to promptly get out on the other side of the road. A very long trip for sure. Buster heads up the staircase to a very large house and shows himself in to see Catherine, presumably, and he says, "Will you marry me?" She replies, astounded, "Certainly not." Buster, quite unsure on what to do, promptly takes his cane and his hat and leaves without further question. The servant, seeing his return, opens the door for him and says, "I think a long walk would do me good," Buster says to his servant. So he walks across the street back to his own residence, and the servants and driver follow him. He drags his cane as he's walking and heads back into his house. Catherine, starting to feel guilty, and unsure of herself, looks over towards his residence and is seemingly pouting. Buster's servant comes over to him and says, "Your ticket, sir, and congratulations," for he's unaware that Catherine's not accepted Buster's proposal. "The boat sails at 10 in the morning, sir." "I don't get up that early, so I'll go aboard tonight." Buster looks solemn and disappointed as he tears up the tickets for his planned honeymoon. Going on a honeymoon without a bride is like singing the words of "Kiss Me Again" to the music of "Alice, Where Art Thou?" Buster's driver asks him, "What pier, sir?" "Pier 2, he reports from the one ticket that he has left over. Catherine and Frederick are discussing, and she says, "I must get some papers off the Navigator. It's at Pier 12. So soon enough, they arrive at Pier 12. Buster loses his ticket, and he's on the ship, and he happens to lose his ticket, but he finds the room that he's supposed to be in. He heads inside and sees his place where he will be staying, and he tries out the different accessories. But soon we see Friedrich, and he has just been mugged. The muggers ask him with much anger, "Is there anyone on board?" And Friedrich says, "Nobody." Pardon me, it was a ship man. Friedrich we see go into what he thinks is Pier 2 when it is really Pier 12. And under the cover of darkness, he doesn't see those who are around. So the muggers, they split so that he's unseen. Friedrich is now mugged and kidnapped, and he cries out for help. Catherine hears his cries and hurries over to see what she can do. The ship seems to have begun to move already, and she climbs aboard quickly. The bad guys of this time, they start to untie the ropes from the pier to let go the ship, and the boardwalk is beginning to move away from the dock, and soon enough it has fallen off the boardwalk and she is helpless to get back to land. Catherine cries out for help, unsure of what to do. She collapses on the ground, just exhausted with fear. The next morning, we see the ship out on the waters, and Buster, unaware that anything has gone wrong at this point, climbs out of his quarters and goes out onto the deck. He soon loses his hat, but with no expression to reflect any sort of problem. He just grabs his next hat and goes on his way. Catherine, unsure of her bearings, starts to knock on the doors of the different quarters to see if anyone is there to help. Buster heads to the dining area to get breakfast and claps his hand most indignantly to get the attention of some servers, but no one comes. He soon then leaves and heads back towards his quarters. His hat is lost again, but he retrieves he retrieves it and finds his yet a third hat. As he's walking around the ship, he notices that there's no one steering the ship at all. Catherine, still looking about for someone else on board, heads down to the lower level of the ship, barely missing Buster, who had just come down from the level above. They stand facing the same direction on the boat, but on different levels. The irony is quite humorous. Buster, taking a drag of his cigarette, enjoys that drag and then drops the cigarette on the ground. Catherine notices the cigarette butt and assumes that there must be someone around. Catherine calls out for someone and heads upstairs to find the person who had the cigarette. Buster hears her cries and begins to look for her. Now they've begun to run in circles, trying to find each other. She rounds the corner, making a left, and he soon follows. And either they are chasing each other, trying to find each other, or she is running away from Buster, assuming that he is yet another person who, like the muggers, kidnapped her father. Catherine heads down to the level once more, and Buster heads up to the top level. Soon enough, Catherine heads up to the top level and Buster goes down. There's all sorts of confusion as they chase either after each other or away from each other. Catherine goes down to sit on a bench, and soon we see that the ship bell has been rung, and Buster and Catherine practically fall into each other, and he promptly says to her, "Will you marry me?" And she says, "This is a fine time to ask me that. I'm cold and hungry," and she's visually upset. He helps her up and notices the damage of his third hat, but leaves it there. He grasps her hand and takes her through the ship.